What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Facade. I'm your host, Gavin J. Gallagher, and on this podcast I explore the mental and emotional game often playing out subconsciously in your mind and in the mind of everyone else in the real estate or property market. The key to success in this game is to master your mindset and behavior, to take control of your thoughts, your emotions, and most importantly, your ego. So here we are in episode 18, and in last week's episode 17 I was speaking about alternative finance, and I had a conversation with David Jelly of propertybridges.com, which is a peer-to-peer lending platform based here in Ireland. So I hope you guys found that useful. I actually spoke to David during the week, and he said that he got a massive response from the podcast. He said there was a huge kind of spike in the numbers of people that were listening or that were checking him out on LinkedIn and things like that. So seems to be going in the right direction. This week I've got a real treat for you guys. I am speaking with Mr. Antony Slumbers, and Antony is a globally recognized speaker, writer and advisor on the PropTech and also space as a service. So I'm going to get into that conversation with Antony shortly. But before I do, I want to give you guys just a couple of quick updates. First of all, I am recording this from home, and it is a Saturday evening, and it's coming up on 9:45. My daughter is in bed and I'm home alone because this week I became a father again, and I now am a father of 5 kids. My baby son was born like 48 hours, not even 48 hours ago he was born. And so it's been a super hectic week. And it all happened on my birthday, believe it or not. So my birthday was spent in the maternity hospital while my partner Ilga was giving birth. So that was an unusual birthday. I haven't had too many birthdays like that, I can tell you. And if anyone wants to see what the new arrival looks like, you can check out my Instagram. Gavin J. Gallagher is my handle on Instagram. So before that, I got into my burpee challenge, and I actually, on the day before my birthday, I kind of knew that the birthday was going to be interrupted by the baby's arrival. So I decided to bring my plans forward by a day, and I did 1,048 burpees on the day before my birthday. And the idea was to go at that pretty vigorously, and I did it in under 2 hours, just a smidge under 2 hours. I did it in 1 hour 58 minutes, and I live streamed the entire thing on Facebook. So my August challenge that I set myself of doing 10,000 burpees is actually now very close to complete. I have done 9,750, and by the time you're listening to this podcast, I will have completed it, because it's Sunday tomorrow and I have 250 left to do, and that is pretty easy now at this stage. So I'm going to be getting into the main event now, which is going to be the conversation with Antony Slumbers. But before I do, just thought I would mention if you go back an episode or two, I spoke about the 16 personalities, and that I actually did that test, one of those tests on my daughter, and it was absolutely spot on, to her personality, even at the age of, I think I did it first with my eldest daughter who's 16, and it got her spot on, and then I did it with my 14-year-old and it got her spot on as well, and then I did it with my 12-year-old, and it's very accurate, and it's completely free. So guys, you really should check that out, 16personalities.com, and it is free to do, and you basically get an insight into your personality, your strengths and weaknesses, and that is really useful to know that information at a young age. The younger you get it, the more you can kind of understand about where your strengths are and things like that. So let's get into the main event. This week's conversation is with Mr. Antony Slumbers. He is a very eminent PropTech influencer. I came across Antony, first of all, back in 2018 when I was making a YouTube video called The Top 10 PropTech Influencers. And at the time, I didn't really know Antony at all. In fact, I didn't know really any of the influencers. I had just done a bit of a study on the internet, and I gave Antony the number 7 spot. But having gotten to know Antony and having sort of followed all of his content, and he's a really prolific guy, he would actually be number 1 in my opinion today in terms of his influence. And just the knowledge and the quality of the content that he puts out there. If anyone wants to check it out, it's his blog is AntonySlumbers.com. It is very, very useful blog if you want to get into the whole innovation side of the real estate business, which I recommend everybody does, because that is where we're heading into. The technology is just changing every aspect of life. And if you look back, 10 years ago, the retail business was doing fine. The main banking business was doing fine. Today, all of those guys have been disrupted by fintech. And I believe that the property business is going to be disrupted by PropTech. And so I think anyone who wants to be a property investor should be, exploring this stuff now and getting a good handle on what the opportunities are, where you can get information. And it's possible that you can get the same information that these massive companies get and they pay a lot for. You can have that information just as quickly as they now. And so it's democratizing the whole internet area. And I think that is going to be a massive opportunity for investors in real estate. So I'm going to read you out a little bio on Antony, and then I'm going to go straight into the conversation. Antony is a globally recognized speaker, advisor, and writer on the topic of PropTech and space as a service. He's also a serial entrepreneur, having founded and exited several PropTech companies, and now consults a number of real estate boards on their transformation, technology, and innovation strategies. He writes an influential blog, as I've mentioned, AntonySlumbers.com, and is a very prolific Twitter user with the handle Antony Slumbers. I'm going to put links to all of this in the show notes. This year, he launched an online course called Future Proofing the Office. He's co-founded a property or education platform called realinnovationacademy.com. And if you guys want to go and check that out, I'm going to put links in the show notes. So you're in for a real treat, guys. Antony speaks at conferences all over the world. People pay money to go to these conferences. They pay a lot of money. And he's advising venture capital firms, big property firms. So you're getting a real insight here into some of the top information that's out there. So without any further ado, guys, a conversation with Mr. Antony Slumbers. Antony, welcome. I'm thrilled to have you on the podcast today. It's been a while since I've seen you. I first came into awareness of you back when I was researching for my top 10 PropTech influencers video that I put out back in 2018. And I didn't really know much about anybody at the time. I was making a video because it was an interesting topic for me. And since then, though, I've been following all of your posts and your videos and your speaking that you do and things like that, and your podcast more recently. And you've really become this, globally recognized thought leader in the whole area of PropTech and innovation in real estate and space as a service. And so it's great to have you on board today for a great discussion. For the purpose of our audience, I was just thinking perhaps the best place to start is with a bit of a backstory, just to tell us how you started out and kind of bring us up to, I guess, the foundation of the internet, where your career sort of took a bit of a different path.
Right. Well, that is a long story. One of the advantages of being old is you have long stories to tell, but I will tell it succinctly. Rather bizarrely, if you like, I come from the age before the internet, and even more bizarrely for someone who's run software companies for 20 years, I actually have a degree in history and the history of art. And for the first X number of years of my career, I actually worked for one of the leading European art dealer in London. And an oddity of the time then was that a lot of the high-end art dealers got involved with property development. I actually got involved with developing some office stuff and some residential and that sort of stuff. And then this is right at the end of the 80s, and the big crash in the 80s, and then basically the first half of the 90s was everyone hiding away, hoping to keep out of trouble. And eventually things sort of picked up a bit. And in January 1995, actually on my birthday, I remember it, I was in the West End of London and went in to what was then the first internet cafe, and thought, oh, this is this looks like an interesting thing, because in in real estate we have lots of images, we have lots of documents, we have lots of people in lots of different locations. So this funny internet thing that connects everyone together would seem to be worth getting into. So in a nutshell, I, I then pivoted from a art historian to a software developer, because at that time the entire HTML specification, so everything you could do on the web, was 34 pages of A4. That was it.
Wow.
Everything you could do could be printed out on 34 pages of A4. You couldn't even center. When I started, you couldn't even center images. You could only left a line. And then in 2001, down at MIPIM of all places, I got started with a joint venture that I entered into with Broadgate Estates, which was the property management arm of British Land, which was then the largest REIT in the UK, to produce a suite of property management tools and also what is now called tenant engagement software. So we launched what was called Vicinity, and the idea of Vicinity was the space around you in May 2001, and then rolled that out across Broadgate, big development centre London, then all BL's buildings, and then third party customers. I carried on there for quite a while. It was a joint venture deal where they were allowed to, they could buy me out after a certain number of years, and fortunately they did. And I carried on working there for a while. So overall, spent about 20 years running software companies, five different startups, closed two of them, did okay on one of them, did iffy on another, but sort of knocked it out in the park on the last. So 1 in 5, that's not a bad ratio for startups. And then over the last few years, I got more and more interested in just looking at the macro level of the impact of technology on real estate, which is essentially what I've been interested in all along. And I started writing a lot more. The writing led to speaking, and so on from there. So up until last year, I would say I spent about a third of my time writing, a third of my time speaking at conferences, and a third of my time consulting with anyone from startups through to institutions, helping people understand the impact of real estate and technology. And then the latest thing I've started is in March this year, with a colleague of mine, Dror Poleg, who's based in New York. We started the Real Innovation Academy, which is an online course which we call the #Future Proof Office course, which is really aimed at helping real estate people understand a lot more about technology, and technology people understand a lot more about real estate, and then all of them to understand more about the macro drivers changing the nature of demand within the industry. So that's
in a nutshell.
That's many years in hopefully not many minutes.
And tell me this, I just wanted to go back to your art career. Do you think any of your skill sets you picked up in that area have been translated into your current career or the last 20 years?
I absolutely do, because I think it's a fortuitous thing for me that I tend to approach things in a slightly different way to everyone else, because I'm sort of partly approaching things from the love of the technology side, but partly as an absolute lovey. And then there's something of this crossover between sort of left brain and right brain, which is what I think, modesty aside, makes my writing quite popular. That it's sort of I mean, it's not wildly unconventional, but it's a bit different to what most people are doing. And I think that's just a reflection of my background.
A varied career, yeah. No, it's true. It's something about your writing I really do enjoy. I have to say, it's so unlike everyone else's writing out there. So yeah, for sure, kudos on that. And when you were a property developer for a time, did you get much success with that, or was it really just sort of trying to kind of keep the wolf from the door while you had these pieces of art sitting?
Well, it's typical real estate cycle thing, isn't it? For a time, of course, we were complete geniuses, We were absolutely brilliant. Right at the end of the 80s, we were just fantastic. We were minting money. We were the cleverest people on earth, just
Been there.
generating value just amazingly because we were just so amazing. And then, of course, the market turned and we immediately turned into complete idiots.
It's so true. Yeah.
And sat in. I remember we developed a block of flats in London, and it was only 12 flats. They were sort of very posh flats near Wimbledon Common, and I think we spent £5.5 million developing them, and it all went wrong, and we ended up actually being able to buy it back for £1.5 million.
Wow.
So of course we thought we were incredibly smart, but then we moved in. We were based in Berkeley Square before that, but we bought this block of flats, so we moved over there, and promptly sat there for 6 months, and not a single person came in the door.
Wow.
Even though we could completely slash the prices for 6 months, literally no one came in. And I think there's a thing about people who've actually been through a real estate cycle. You know, it's such a long time since we've been through a bad one.
Yeah.
That too many people do think they're too clever, and all they're
totally
doing is just riding a wave, and then when it turns, boom. You know,
Yeah, no, I have talked about that so many times on this podcast. I mean, 2008, in 2007, exactly. I was a genius, and I was, flying around the world at first class and all of this kind of stuff, thinking nothing I could do could turn wrong. And then I was humbled, let's just say. 2008, 2009, and 2010 was an absolute nightmare. With banks chasing me all over the place for big debts.
Well, I was exactly the same. A crash earlier, if you like, and it's just a truism that I think you need to learn. And I mean, resi generally is not my thing. My thing mainly has been commercial, so I don't really know much about resi. But I remember I've had a number of arguments with people about iBuyers. And I just think it's the most bonkers thing on earth. You know, let's take a business with tiny margins in an industry with huge volatility. But no, they all insisted to me, don't be silly, we've got this all worked out. iBuyers will be good in good markets, good in bad markets. Of course, come the pandemic, all the iBuyers shut down and didn't do anything for months. And I just think there's a certain reality check that we all need to take within real estate. And increasingly, I'm much more interested in the fundamentals of real estate, in the sense of, is this a great space that supplies what somebody needs and they will love, rather than, oh well, let's just build, the financial. I'm a lot less interested in the financialization of real estate, and much more interested in actually the product that interfaces with the customers. That's not, in many ways, there's probably more money to be made in just the financialization of real estate, but I just don't find it so interesting. I'm interested in, it's our responsibility to build great things. That's what the real estate industry is. We provide the spaces where people spend 90% of the time. So I actually do think we have a responsibility to build great stuff. And I know a lot of the industry doesn't look at it like that, which is, you only need to drive around and look at a lot of the stuff that gets built, and you think, God, that's just built by someone who really doesn't care at all. Mm-hmm. But it's a huge industry, and I think you find your niche in it. And my niche is with those who are interested in building something great, and then having a great relationship with the customer.
Yeah, no, I think you're definitely a man after my own heart as well. We have the business park here in Dublin that we built, and we still manage today after 20 years. And we're still putting as much attention into it today as we did the day that it was built. And that's one of the reasons that I got into all of the innovation and the PropTech stuff, is because it's how you adapt to, they're 20-year-old buildings now. So we have to learn to adapt and make sure that they're still doing what they're supposed to do. And I have seen changes that you're talking about, the interaction with staff and with people that are working there. It has changed people, the way that people drive to work. A lot of people are now cycling, taking public transport. The whole thing that's obviously changing now is COVID-19 is going to have a dramatic impact on the office sector in particular. And our business park has been almost completely empty for the last couple of months. And just a few days ago, the Irish government announced that there was an uptick in cases, and so they're bringing in some additional restrictions and stuff. And all of a sudden, I'm getting emails. Oh, we're not going to be reopening the office until January now, and things like that. So it's some of these. Well, a lot of them are multinationals that would have the US as their headquarters, and so the policy is being dictated from the US, which obviously has a different sort of set of circumstances again than all of us. But what's your view on the COVID-19 impact? I mean, what I'm getting at is obviously work from home has been fully tried and tested now for the last couple of months. And the previous belief that it wasn't going to be possible has been poo-pooed in a big way. And a lot of people are predicting that, the office is going to be dead and buried and stuff. I don't quite share that, but I'm curious what your views are on the future for offices.
I think the office is dead. Long live the office. there is a type of office that is absolutely dead. That was dying anyway. The office's production center. Lots of people lined up in rows of desks doing things that are structured, repeatable, predictable. All that stuff was dying in anyway. There's a fundamental point that the thing about the machines are taking over the world. Well, they're not taking over the world, but the thing about the machines is the machines will be doing a vast amount of the things that people have done over the last X number of decades, because machines are much better at humans at certain things. But fortunately, humans are much better than machines at certain things, and largely it splits between the machines, if you like, will be doing any task that is structured, repeatable, or predictable, because that's what machines are good at. Which is fine. And McKinsey had written back in 2017 that they reckon that's 50% of all the tasks that people are paid for around the world. So you have to start looking at, well, in that case, well, what are humans going to be doing? Well, humans are going to be doing what humans are good at. Paradoxically, in a more technological world, the greatest skills to have are actually going to be human skills rather than technical skills, because human skills are all about imagination, design, abstract and critical thinking, judgment, empathy, and all these sort of things. And it's really our job to be defining the questions that we want the machines to answer. Picasso once said that computers are useless. All they can do is give you answers. And that is fundamentally the point. They're very good at giving you answers. But the more important thing is what questions you ask them. So the movement in terms of work has been a slow move over the last 10 years to the changing nature of the work we do. A lot of people talk about, the way we work is changing, but it's actually not the way we work that matters. It's the work we do. And as I say, we're going to be doing more and more human skill related things. And what's happened with COVID is that it has actually just completely proved the point that funny enough, our technological infrastructure is now such that, well, clearly we don't need an office anymore. That changes the whole thing. This is the office market, to me, is now going through what the retail industry went through 10 years ago. 10 years ago, essentially people realized that they do not need shops to go shopping. The more dozy parts of the real estate industry didn't get their heads around the fact that their product wasn't actually needed anymore, and what they should be concentrated on is making people want to go there. And it's the same, I think, is going to apply with offices, that we don't need an office, but we need to develop a product that people want. And there are very, very strong reasons for the office becoming actually, in a way, more important the more it's not needed. Because as I say, if we're doing more, if our human value is more and more developing our human skills, mostly those human skills are going to be developed with other people. So to develop human new products and new services with other people, well, where are you going to do that? Well, I'm not going to do that sitting at home. I need to go somewhere that is designed to catalyze my human skills. So I believe the office, paradoxically, for a different purpose, is in some ways actually going up in value, not down in value. But it's a very particular type of office. There's no point me going to the office to, as someone said to me the other day, have a meeting with myself.
Yeah.
I can sit here and do tippy tappy on my computer all day. There's zero reason to go to the office just to sit in front of a screen, use your laptop or whatever. But there's a huge amount of point in going there to meet a customer, or to work with my team, or to mentor my staff, or to learn a new skill. But all of those things are things that need particular environments. And you know the old Churchill thing of first we shape our buildings and then we shape us. Well, I thought that was actually, he said that, I think in 41, was it? After the Houses of Parliament were bombed and they were talking about how they were going to rebuild them. And I don't think it's ever been as important, that comment, as now, because the importance of the space you're in, to me, is huge, particularly in the world we're going into. So to get the most value out of me and you and our colleagues, when that value is about them using their human skills to the greatest ability that they can, we need the right types of spaces to do that. So we need to be in different environments. And so you can't just line us up at a load of desks and say, well, now go and do something human. We need to design spaces that are there to catalyze human skills, which is partly why you saw such a growth in the flex market. Because if you look at the aesthetic of a lot of the flex industry, was completely different to a traditional office space, and they have a completely different vibe, a different feel. And actually, you go in those spaces and you feel differently than in traditional offices. So my feeling is we're going to get, hopefully, much more sophisticated and think a lot harder about the spaces we need and what we need them for. And so we will end up with using a multitude of different spaces. So I will come into my office, but for a particular purpose. Most likely I will come there to be with my team. And most likely I will come in there to be with my team for a particular purpose. Then I might go home and do some focus work. Then I might go somewhere, work from near home, because I just want to be with someone else and we need some separation between home and work. And I might go and work in a hotel. I might go and work in a library. And there's this notion of hub, home, and roam, which I really like. So, we have our hubs, and then we have our homes, and then we roam. And I think but in each case, and this goes back to all my notions about space as a service, which I've always said has two real meanings. First meaning of space as a service is that it's space that's procured on a flexible basis. But the more important meaning of space as a service is space that provides you with the services you need to do the jobs to be done that you have to do at any moment. So Antony's in the office in the morning. What's he got to do? He's having a meeting with his team. How many people? 6. Therefore, he needs a space to do that. And in the afternoon, Antony's doing some quiet work. So where's he going to do that? In a space that's dedicated to that. Then he's going to go and give a talk. He needs to go to a space to do that. And I think it's this understanding of, it's funny, it's an old art history term, form and function. Ernst Gombrich, one of the great art historians, talked about form and function. The right form for a particular function. And I think we're just going to get a lot more sophisticated in real estate in terms of understanding the physical requirements of individuals and companies to do what they need to do, and then providing it to them, but providing it to them on a dynamic basis. So in my talks, I tend to have one particular slide that says, anyone who's worked in tech knows that the starting point in tech is build, measure, learn. Build, measure, learn. You build something, you measure how it's worked, you learn from that, and you iterate. But in real estate, we stop at build. So, which is why so often you have a new building or a new workplace, and it's fabulous. Day one, it just looks beautiful. Six months in, the company's changed around a bit, and you have something where the product market fit has completely gone. So I think we're going to find offices being much more intelligent in terms of monitoring the quantitative and qualitative needs of the occupants, and then so monitoring them and then being continually optimized to suit the ongoing requirements, which is really real estate as a service rather than a product. And I think this has just moved all of this on. Are we all going to work at home? No. Are we all going to work in the office? No. I mean, I see it as the classic bell curve. You've probably got, I don't know, 5 or 10% of people who are going to work at home full time. 5 or 10% of people who are going to work in the office full time. And then there'll be a bell curve of people who work there, probably averaging 2-3 days a week, but very specific, for a very specific purpose and at a higher utilization. So, I mean, this all wraps up with sustainability quite a lot. I was talking to someone yesterday, and we were talking about how do you get sustainability into offices. And I was saying, well, if you look at it at the moment, though we tend to just ignore this, but the average office, I know there's outliers, office desks is utilized 50% of the time. And if you look at satisfaction with the office, personal satisfaction office, it's around about half the people, around about 50% of people say their office enables them to be productive. Now, really, that is a hashtag double fail.
Yeah.
People are only using our space half the time, and frankly, half of them don't really like it. But also in a sustainability sense, that's crazy because we're underutilizing these spaces. Yeah. So I was saying, if you say you set a task that you wanted your space to be utilized 70% of the time plus with 70% satisfaction. What do I need to do to make my space 70% utilization with 70% satisfaction? But the difference in productivity and sustainability between a space used 50-50 and 70-70 is huge. And we should, as an industry, be looking to, well, how do we do that? Whereas historically, the aim of a letting agent has been to let as much space as possible for as long as possible. And if they don't use it very well, tough. I don't care. But I think in the new world, the premium's going to be on, I'm going to let you the least amount of space for the shortest amount of time, but I'm going to operate it in such a way that you utilize it and your satisfaction is going to be dramatically higher than it would have been, and you're going to pay me a hell of a lot more for it. But you'll still probably be quids in because I'm going to half your space needs, but maybe up your cost 60-70%. But you're still net going to win because I'm going to provide you with better space. My job is going to be not letting you space, but enabling you to have a productive workforce. So instead of being landlord and tenant, I'm not exactly going to be your partner, but I'm going to work with you to help you monitor and optimize this space on an ongoing basis to enable your people to be as effective as possible. And you're going to pay at a unit economics point a lot more for that, but you're going to still be smiling. So yeah. When we actually start to, when the cycle goes round again and things free up, I think you're definitely going to find overall office demand is going to drop dramatically, but that is actually going to be a positive for really good office operators. Because I think, unlike the historic world of real estate where we're all geniuses or idiots at the same time, I think you're going to get a much more multi-tier market where you're going to get cheap space will be there'd be a market for that. There's always a market for cheap space because there's always people who just need cheap. And you're going to get really, really strong premium space, which is generating a lot more income out of a building because it's much more actively managed, much more thought through. And then you're going to get lots of space in the middle, which is just trying to be, oh, well, this, it's a really nice spec. Yeah, but it's boring and it doesn't do anything, and it's just a product, and I think that's going to have a difficult time. So I do think there is going to be a paradox where the demand for office space declining significantly is in no way necessarily a bug for the industry. In fact, I think it's going to be a feature for the industry, because I think you're going to end up with certain buildings or certain operators or certain landlords that customers want their space, and I don't want anything else. I don't want 20,000 square feet of space. I want 20,000 square feet of Gavin space.
Yeah, it'll be
in the same way as, if you think of it like, I always use the car analogy. So Audi, BMW, Mercedes, and if you think the most important customer for any of those is the person buying their first luxury car. It's like the Jesuits, you get them young and you keep them for life. And I think this is going to happen in real estate, that people are going to develop very strong brands targeted at particular markets with a great knowledge of what that market really needs to run its business. And people will go, yeah, well, I will pay €5 for that, but I'll pay €2 for that. Yeah, but that's not very, very different to that. Yeah, but it isn't that. So that
I get you.
2 plus 2 equals 5, as opposed to 2 plus 1 equals 2. So.
Yeah, no, I think it's a very good point, and it's if you look at the WeWork, I mean, whatever about the implosion last year with the IPO, but the actual product market fit seemed to be very good, and attracted a huge number of people and interest. And I think it's exactly for those reasons that you say, is that people were going in there because it satisfied a need, and your satisfaction levels were high as well. And people were raving about their WeWork office, and even though you were crammed up against each other and things like that, it still ticked the box in terms of what people were looking for. And also it's the environment that they were getting, being surrounded by like-minded people and things like that. So it is, yeah, it's very interesting. It's interesting to think that a traditional developer or investor, like a REIT or something like that, that they're going to have to upskill in all of these areas. That, I mean, hospitality and brand and all of that has not traditionally been an area that these kind of players are good at. And so there's going to be a sort of a day of reckoning, I think, in the industry, where they're going to have to start upskilling in all of these areas.
I think absolutely. I think the real estate company of the future is a very different animal to the real estate company of the past. But it is the real estate company of the present plus, because it's not like you don't need all these real estate skills. You still need all the real estate skills, and a really good real estate operator is a really good real estate operator. But you need so much more, because you are fundamentally changing from being a product business to a service business. So the biggest difficulty, I think, for landlords is going to be working out who they are and who they want to be, because from the customer's point of view, to deliver the user experience that the customer wants requires a whole set of other skills. I would say there's six different skills that make up a user experience, which at the moment are 6 different industries. So you've got the real estate industry, still need all those skills. You've got networking and IoT skills. You need data skills. Then you need workplace skills. You need HR skills, and you need hospitality skills to create a great user experience. At the moment, that is 6 different industries that all go into creating a space for people. The real estate company of the future, in my mind, is going to merge all 6 of those in various ways. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be one monolithic block, but there has to be a fluidity of purpose and data around those different skills. So I think the complicated thing for the real estate company is to work out how they want to satisfy that need. So does that mean they try and become all those things? Do they try and become an operator? And I certainly, there's loads of talk now. People say, oh, well, the thing about all these flex operators is all very well, but if it's any good, then landlords can just do it, which is like thinking, no, you don't understand. It's like that's like saying, well, if this brain surgery thing is good, well, we'll just get into brain surgery. It's hard. It's just because it looks. It's like saying, oh, this hotel business, that doesn't look very hard. It's incredibly hard, and it's a different skill. And you may want to get into that. You may not want to get into that. So the whole build, buy, or partner thing becomes really, really important. And where do you want to sit on the value chain? And what's your business model? And I think that is going to range across the whole gamut of, at one side there be probably the very biggest companies who say, right, well, we're going to go all in. We're going to start expanding our our horizontal and vertical capabilities, and we're going to do all this ourselves. So people like Tishman in America are doing it. There will be a few of those, and at the other end there'll be real estate companies that just go, I don't want anything to do with this. My job is I'm a real estate developer. So I'm going to find a plot of land, get some planning and build something, and then I'm off. I'm not interested in any of that. Or I'm an investor. That's what I do. I like to sit on the golf course, but I'm rich. So I will buy the building and I will lease the building and then go away. I don't want anything to do with it. And that's perfectly legitimate. I mean, there are certainly, and I think there will be quite a lot of that. There's enough money in real estate. There's enough real estate companies who have plenty of money to say, I really don't need to squeeze every last penny out of it. I'm already rich. This is going to just make me richer, maybe a little bit slower, but that's fine. And then there's going to be a mix between people who either partner with people or start to build ecosystems of suppliers and knit them together. But that is going to be a real challenge, I think. The nature of the real estate company of the future is tricky, and
for sure,
as I say, they just need to decide where they are.
Yeah, it's something that we as a business are grappling with ourselves, because there's also the different views across a board of directors, and you've got people that are forward looking, and then you've got people that are sort of have a thought that this is how it's been done for many years, and so don't really plan to do anything different. And there's a risk, I guess, of being too early and jumping into new sectors that are and being kind of a pioneer, and getting in too early is also a risk. Because you can certainly, I've done it in the past. I've been a pioneer, and I've been too early to the game, and you don't last while you're waiting for the rest of the market to catch up. And then
there's that saying, isn't there? The being too early is just another way of saying being wrong.
yeah. I don't like to admit it, but yeah, I guess that's absolutely spot on. Yeah. Antony, just moving away from the offices, you're advising so many big sort of companies in the States and the UK and stuff like that. I'm just curious, what other trends have you noticed if you're with your radar out there for just general innovation in real estate? Is there any particular trends or things that you're seeing?
Funny enough, when the year started, I thought I was going to do nothing this year apart from talking about sustainability.
Me too, yeah.
I thought that was going to be just the thing I talked about all the time. Partly because that was coming anyway. And then in January, Larry Fink, who's the boss of BlackRock, who writes his annual letter to shareholders, wrote this piece, which essentially blah, 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 and then has 5 words, which I think are absolutely transformational. Climate risk is investment risk. 5 words. And I thought, wow, once the money is worried about their money, regardless of whether they care, they could be like Trump and think the whole climate change thing is a myth. But if believing in that is going to help them keep hold of their money, things were going to happen anyway. So I genuinely thought there was going to be a really strong push towards sustainability across, everything from how you build it to you operate it, and I think that's still going to be the case. I think one of the things that COVID has done is it has made the world realize that, funnily enough, something can happen that affects the whole world. And if you think about what's been going on the last few months, when else has there been anything that affected the whole world at the same time?
Yeah.
And not only that, because it affected the whole world at the same time, and we saw, carbon emissions drop so much, I think that there's probably hundreds of millions of people around the world who suddenly smell air that they'd never smelt before.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to make a big difference. And as someone said to me, rather strange way of looking at it, but they said, well, COVID actually could be a vaccine for climate change.
I was thinking
in the sense of showing that, whoa, something really, really big could happen, and therefore we need to start taking some steps to deal with it. And I do think that is still going to be a huge trend. And I certainly, from the PropTech point of view, given the sheer scale of the market, anyone who can come up with something that has a material impact on the carbon emissions of a building has the biggest market in the world to sell into. So there's a massive prize there.
I think you're absolutely right. Just going back to your point, I remember recently looking at the Barack Obama speaking about 5 years ago and warning everybody about this risk of a pandemic, a flu-borne pandemic, and that we need to put infrastructure in place and all of these kind of things that he was warning people. And he says it could be in the next 5-10 years and it could really impact. And nobody paid any attention to it, scaremongering or whatever it is. And everyone ignored it. And then suddenly here it is upon us. And look at the economic cost that it has cost us. Yeah. And then if you think about what else have scientists been warning us about for decades now, climate change. And everyone has just been ignoring it pretty much. I mean, with the exception maybe of Copenhagen, who have gone for the zero carbon city. But I think most people, it's just lip service, really. And I think at some point in the near future, there's going to be this watershed moment when everything changes, when it's either a city gets wiped out from a flood or something like that. And then suddenly people are going to take note, and then suddenly it's going to be governments on the back foot having to kind of raise taxes and do all sorts of highly unpopular things, but there will be no choice in the matter. And I think where this has really highlighted that is the COVID response, and the fact that shutdowns and lockdowns and all of this, like, nobody wants it from an economic point of view, but there is no choice in the matter.
So no, that's absolutely true. We misunderstand the financial consequences of things. So some of these things, we didn't do that because that would have cost 20 billion. Well, yeah, 20 billion sounded a lot then, but it doesn't. Sounds like in the context, tuppence now, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's now going to cost you 200 billion or a trillion, or the whole of London's going to be shut. The whole of Manhattan's going to be shut for four months. Well, what's the cost of that? I'm hoping that this does lead to people really, really paying that attention, and I think it will, partly because there is definitely a huge pressure coming from the investment community now. There's enough of the money saying, do this or we can't fund you, or do this and we can fund you on better terms. The whole notion of green finance, and the numbers are big now. You look at the EU's green fund. It's big, hundreds of billions, and there's big consequences there. But I think you're getting it from the other end now. I was talking to a developer in London a couple of weeks ago who are particularly forward thinking in this sort of thing, and they said the CEO was telling me that we try in all our leasing to not mention anything as dirty as money. We don't mention rent. We're focusing on, we are producing the most sustainable, the most environmentally friendly buildings. And our target and our hypothesis is that if we produce the most sustainable buildings, there are customers out there who will want the most sustainable buildings. And he said the last big letting we did, afterwards, I said to them, great to have you on board and whatever, but what really mattered to you? And they said, well, frankly, we wanted the most sustainable building in London, and you had it, and that was it. That's why we're here, because we wanted that. So there is a top and a bottom real pressure,
yes, for sure,
to make this. But that also now flips onto the other huge trend, I think, is going to be all around indoor air quality and environmental conditions within buildings. Again, this is something we've known about for a long time, and never really paid any attention to, because you can't see it. But now, if you want to get people back in your building, you're going to have to prove to them that your building is safe, and a lot of that is going to come through being able to show them environmental conditions. What's the humidity, what's the temperature, what's the CO2, what's the particulate level. Tell us how much. How is your air conditioning working? How much fresh air are you using? And these are all things that only real geeky people had any interest in until very recently. And now I can't believe that any company beyond a certain size is not going to have it written into their lease about environmental conditions. I just can't see them doing it. And also, I was talking to an American chap yesterday whose area of interest is the mental health impact of things like COVID and pandemics and whatever. And he was making the point, and this might be a particularly American thing, but he was saying if you look at the death rates from COVID, they're primarily or almost exclusively people of a certain age or people who have some sort of pre-existing condition. And he said, in America, though, about 60% of people have a pre-existing condition. So if you're a company, you have a very strong incentive now to try and help your employees be healthier, because if they're not healthy, they're going to be an awful lot more susceptible to these sorts of pandemic. And you suddenly think, my God, this is actually a completely different way of looking at it. It's sort of, and I'm seeing this increasingly, this mix of things which feel on one hand really quite sort of soft and fluffy and lovey, but are actually pure Adam Smith. So paying a lot of attention to my employees' health feels like, do I really care? And is that all a bit sweet? But of course you should care, but it's also incredibly good business to care,
sure.
to care. And I think the whole trend around environmental conditions within buildings is, like sustainability, an absolutely massive market for PropTech. It might be materials, it might be literally sensors, it might be software, it might be design, it might be blah blah blah. But it's going to be huge, because we need to. So someone said to me, which I thought sounded ludicrous until I thought about it. Well, they said, well, we want people to leave our building in the evening healthier than when they came in. And you're there, stupid. And then you think, well, hang on, no, that actually, if you're in London, indoor air quality can probably be better than outdoor air quality. So yeah, that actually makes sense. Come and spend time in our building. It'll make you healthier. But also, what I think is interesting and how all these things link together is this actually then comes back to answering the big productivity question. Because the number of times people say, oh well, how do we measure productivity in the workplace? You can't measure productivity in the workplace. Well, of course you can measure productivity in the workplace if you concentrate on cognitive function.
Yes.
So, for instance, there is reams of peer-reviewed scientific papers demonstrating the impact of environmental conditions on cognitive function. So stick me in a room that's too hot, like last week, my cognitive function goes down. Same with too cold or too much noise, too blah blah blah. So
Too much
if you
CO2.
just take productivity as a function of the space you're in doing no harm to your cognitive function, then you're increasing productivity. So part of again the user experience of Gavin's space is in Gavin's space, he's really paying attention to helping you be as good as you can be, because he's paying attention to your noise, your lighting, your CO2, etc. And so you should be operating on cognitive function. And I can see this coming up as part of the new KPIs of a lease.
Yes.
In the sense of, right, for our particular industry or our particular department, that department, they need it noisy because it's, I don't know, it's the salespeople or whatever. In that department, they need it cool and quiet. They need a lot of lights because they're the creative people. And so we can define a set of KPIs of what we need that would help us be as good as we can be. And the landlord or the operator will say, okay, fine. You pay me, you're going to pay me based on how close I get to that. And if I really nail it, you're going to pay more the better the conditions beyond a certain point, or you're going to pay a penalty if the conditions go down. Now, this again gets back to working out where you are and the business model for a landlord, because a lot of this, I think, requires great coordination between the fabric of the building and the operation of the building, which again I think is actually one of the curses of the lease. That it splits. You know, once it's signed, it's split between the building and the internal tenant demise. But you know, you're going to need to be able to flex space, partly in terms of layouts, but partly in terms of, you know, the mechanical function. So you're going to need business models that allow that to happen. But if you're being paid a premium rate for providing premium environments, then I think that changes everything. So those two huge trends of anyone who can create products or services that aid in sustainability and anything to do with environmental conditions and productivity and the efficiency of workplace, I think is going to be massive.
I think it's like, I think I heard you say it in one of your talks that people don't want an office, they want a productive workplace.
Yeah.
And that's what it boils down to. Yeah. And I totally agree. I've seen that, in fact, in our business park. A couple of the tech companies, the bigger tech companies, have invested a huge amount of money in wellness cert, or, you know, this well cert that you can get. And so the air quality is of certain levels, and there's so much light, and there's so much access to biophilia, and so green. And so it's interesting to see the focus going on all that stuff. And it's quite a large investment. So it's not something that they're just spending because they want it to look fancy. It's actually like they're spending real dollars on this kind of thing.
But what's interesting here, and what's, I think, a big opportunity, and I can see a big market opening, is doing all the WELL certificate stuff. It's possible to do if you need to be quite a decent sized company to do this. You need to be of a certain scale. But most companies aren't big. Most companies are small.
Yes.
So I think there's a huge market in where landlord/operators become their service is doing this for you. Because if I'm a big company, I've got my own internal real estate department, I've got designers, I've got everything. Most companies don't have that, and they don't have the skills. What they have skills at is running their business, but they don't know how to run. You know, the interesting thing I think about the workplace is it's actually becoming much more complicated and much more sophisticated. So if you think 10 years ago, a typical office, you have 50 staff, so you go out and you buy 50 desks, 50 chairs, 50 computers, 50 telephones, you line them up and you make sure everything's in grey, and that's it. Boom, done. That's a workplace. Now, with what we're talking about, it's complicated. It needs all these different skills, and most companies, big companies, so maybe half the market, or I think it's about 40%. In the UK, it's 40% of employees work for companies that employ more than 250 people. 60% work for companies that employ less than that. Anything less than that, they need someone else to do this for them, which again gets back to, I don't want an office, I want a productive workforce. So don't sell me an office, don't sell me square feet, sell me that.
Yeah, I think it's a great point.
There's so much opportunity around selling people not real estate,
but the benefits of what you can provide them.
Yeah, because it's a highly skilled thing, and as a landlord operator, you actually should be able to, again, going back, with tech thinking on it, you should actually be able to develop a flywheel of, you're going to have more data, which gives you more insight, which enables you to build better products, which gives you more data, more insight, because you're doing it for lots of people. So the industry should be able to do this stuff better than almost any. Google can do it themselves, Facebook can do it themselves, but pretty well everyone isn't them. They need someone to do it. I think that's a big opportunity. It's different, and it's going to take a lot of working out. But could you build a brand and a competitive advantage around that? Well, hell yeah, I'm sure
I think you could, yeah. And I've been following Kuhn van Ostrom.
Yeah, well, they're doing that. That's exactly what they're doing. They're saying the reason you come and take our space is because we have done all the thinking, and we have produced this, and it's fantastic stuff. I think it's really fantastic stuff, and I bet they get strong premiums for their space.
I would say so, yeah. And on top of that, they can actually hold their heads up high as delivering a great product that is good for the environment, and that has.
They're not incompatible. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a great point, Anthony. I'm conscious of time, Anthony. We're at about an hour now. I just wanted to ask you before we go. A lot of the big corporations that we've been talking about, but there's our listeners include a lot of people starting out at the very beginning of their careers. Is there any particular advice or mindset or behavior and stuff that you would recommend for somebody who's kind of coming into the industry for the start?
I would say if you're coming from the tech side, try and learn a lot more about the actual real estate industry. Actually, the dynamics of the real estate industry, how it's funded, how it's financed, how it operates. Because to understand who your customer is, you need to understand that. If you're on the real estate side, then read a number of tech books and follow what's happening in the tech industry. Then carry on and come and do our course, which is exactly what our course is about. I think I'm a huge believer in curiosity. I think to run a startup, apart from being persistent, you have to be continually curious, continuously skeptical, not cynical. Never be cynical. Always be skeptical, and try and spend as much time either talking to or listening to the smartest people. And one of the things I so love about Twitter, my Twitter stream, is just gold dust, because I've worked quite hard over many years, and it's just so endlessly interesting, and it gives us access to so many interesting people.
Yeah.
And just really hanging around with smart people. Don't, particularly in real estate, if you're in PropTech, don't sit in too much of a tech bubble, because it's a world. It's PropTech is never going to be quite like pure software. You're mainly going to be dealing in asset heavy businesses rather than asset light, and there is a much higher human component within real estate. So I would say continuous learning, curiosity, and hunt out as many smart people as you can, because I find it incredible how generous so many smart people are. There's a lot of people you ask them on Twitter and you can't believe it, you actually get a reply. And you use those tools, and be nice and be honest. Being nice and being honest is a good thing, because you will. I'm a huge believer, and it's panned out over my career in terms of what goes around comes around, and sooner or later you misbehave, it will come back and bite you. Be honest. Dealing with honest people is a hell of a lot easier than dealing with not honest people, and don't deal with not honest people. And sack bad clients. That was one of the one of the best things in my software business. It was something that came from I think it was David Ogilvy, the advertising person, says one of the first things you must realize when you run an ad agency is you should sack bad clients, because they're like poison.
So true. It's so true. Well, Antony, thanks so much for your time. I just wanted to, you've already plugged your course, so I was going to suggest that, but also how would people find you online? And you have a great blog, if you want to just point people in that direction.
Yeah, if they come to antonyslumbers.com, which is no H in the Antony, and on Twitter I'm at Antony Slumbers, or you can find me on LinkedIn. All my content is on antonyslumbers.com. Tends to be replicated on LinkedIn as well, and I will always converse with people on at Antony Slumbers on Twitter.
Great stuff. Well, Antony, thanks so much for your time, and I wish you well. And I'm going to continue following your speaking and your talking career in the near future.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me, Gavin.
So that's it for episode 18 of Behind the Facade. Thank you so much for listening. You find web links to all the various things discussed today in the show notes. If you found this episode useful, I'd be really grateful if you consider leaving a review on iTunes or whatever platform you listen in from. This really, really helps the podcast move up the rankings and get noticed. If you have any questions or topics you'd like me to cover in future episodes, please join the Facebook group Behind the Facade Community, where you can get access to exclusive content and my weekly live videos offering advice and guidance. Lastly, if you want to connect with me or learn more about me, you should sign up to my newsletter over at www.gavinjgallagher.com/go, or subscribe to my YouTube channel, PropTech TV. So until next week, guys, I wish you all a great week and speak to you soon.